This show is brought to you by Safety FM. This is Safety Justice League.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Jason Maldonado. You're here on another episode of Safety Justice League, the podcast. Today, we welcome you to Thunderd0me. What's the world going to look like after this coronavirus outbreak pandemic? How are we going to view safety differently? Let's find out.
You know, one of the more interesting things about this is that supposedly it's a 100-year pandemic. I think the last time something happened on this scale, I mean, certainly there have been other pandemics that have come in the interim within the last 100 years, that some of them were pretty significant. But the flu was the last major pandemic, and that was about 100 years ago. I think it was 1918. And so we've never experienced anything like this in our lives. Our grandparents probably haven't, if it's 100 years, who's 100 years old, right? Not many people. And so this will definitely change some things. Now, what all it will change, you can't say for certain, but, one of the things that I'm really happy about or pleased with is that it has shown that people can work from home, can work remotely. It's sort of a transition from kind of the old cohort or the old way of doing things. It's this weird idea that you have to be in an office warming a chair in order to be adding value. And I'm glad that I think that this is going to shift us away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I hope that is true because, even in our profession, which is admittedly a really fluid type atmosphere when it comes to the hours that we work, I've worked on certain projects where that mentality was very alive and well, where you had to be sitting at your desk from 8 to 5, and that doesn't really fit what we do. I think it's just not really a good way to manage our business. So I'm looking forward to that part of it, and I hope it does really start to shift in that direction.
I have a slightly alternate perspective from having worked really crazy hours as a consultant for myself and also with having a newborn child right there alongside me. And I guess I'm kind of feeling validated or vindicated that people, yes, they're working from home, but they're also realizing that it's a big challenge. It's difficult. And that suddenly you realize like how many hours there are in a day that you could potentially be productive. And so I think it's good, but I think that we're only going into week 2 really of like mass staying at home and working from home. So I think a lot will still soon come out to play. But I think as people, go on further with this, they're going to realize that they have to set boundaries. And I'm hopeful that employers and just colleagues in our field, that they kind of become a little bit more flexible with others, because I know having had that mom perspective, there were people that didn't either understand it or care to understand it. And so putting us all kind of like on this level playing field of it kind of sucks and we're struggling right now, I feel is good.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that's really you're gonna see a difference in is even just increased bandwidth. We were joking a week ago about how Wi-Fi was running slow, and even this morning, I think Facebook Live basically shut down. There were like so many churches and companies trying to do live through Facebook this morning that it wasn't even working to post those types of things. So I think we're going to see an increased bandwidth as the working at home increases, even post quarantine or social distancing. And I think, and this is one of my concerns, just as in society as a whole, is there is a lot of social distancing that's occurring right now, but are we going to get back to handshakes? Are we going to get back to high fives? I mean, what is going to be destroyed by an extended amount of social distancing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. I don't know. I think we will get back to normal eventually. I could be wrong. And maybe it's a good time to talk a little bit about what to expect. I think minimum we're going to be doing social distancing for 4 weeks. And then, I mean, that's like a bare minimum. It's probably going to be much longer. A lot of people aren't really picking up on this nuance. I posted a video on LinkedIn about it where somebody did an example where they poured a bucket of water into like a smaller container that had a hole at the bottom, but the hole's kind of small. And so as they're pouring the water in, if it doesn't overflow, the water starts coming down slowly, and eventually, it's back down to a normal level. Well, think of that like the hospitals right now. There's all these people coming in, and they can only process so many. They only have so much bandwidth. There's only so much they can handle at one time. Jason Lucas said in an earlier podcast, when I think last or 2 weeks ago, maybe, he said, everybody's going to get this, and it's true. Everyone will get it. So what are we doing right now? What's the deal with social distancing? Who cares, right? Well, it's about delaying the virus. It's about slowing it down so that we don't overwhelm our hospitals. People who are 70 years older or older who are getting this virus most of them need to have a ventilator. They need to have a ventilator because it becomes difficult to breathe. And the statistics are saying that of the 70-plus-year-olds who need a ventilator to survive this virus, 50% of them are dying anyway. And if one needs a ventilator but there's not one available, 100% of them are dying. And so they're a hugely at-risk cohort of our society right now. And if we overload the hospitals, 100% of those people who couldn't get seen are going to die. So it's really important right now to delay the spread of the virus. It cannot be contained. We're already beyond that. It's going to turn into a seasonal thing like the flu. It's going to become seasonal. It's going to keep coming back again. There's no getting rid of it. It's just a matter of slowing it down so that the people who get sick kind of get sick in turns instead of overwhelm the hospitals. So I don't know how long this is going to take, but most of the people I've heard, they are staying at home for 4 weeks at a minimum, and after 4 weeks, their businesses will probably reevaluate and extend the work from home.
I agree. I think it's going to go on a little bit longer. And I guess the cool thing about podcasting is that we're recording this, and so we can see if we were right. Not like I care about being right in this case. I wish it would be less. But speaking of those ventilators, that's something where I'm seeing something that's kind of a positive outcome of coronavirus and people's response is that there's ingenuity going on. And I know that there's some hospitals, they've posted some videos on YouTube or sent them to news outlets where they're basically kind of hacking or souping up ventilators that they have where they can make one ventilator into like 3 or 6 or something by just adding these different parts. And I have friends that work in the medical field and they've already started kind of evaluating parts and things that they have so that they could increase their ventilator capacity, because that's definitely one of the things that's a huge factor right now. So overall, I'm thinking that ingenuity and people innovating things, especially in the medical and healthcare fields, is something that we're seeing out of this. And that, like Nathan, like you said, this isn't going away. It's something that we're going to be dealing with. So another cool ingenuity thing that I'm kind of on the fence about, I don't know if you guys have really seen this much, but there's I forget who did this, a blogger or someone, they posted a pattern that directs people that sew and do crafty things, how they could sew protective masks. And so I think people, they want to help. They want to put some effort somewhere. So there's a lot of people posting about they're making these masks and they're going to send them to the hospitals. And again, my friends in healthcare, they're like, yeah, that's not really going to protect us if we're really having to intubate a patient and be, right there with someone that actually is infected. So there's some, I don't want to call it misguided, but I think that there's ingenuity there. People want to help. I feel this like greater positive kind of social good happening. So hopefully that's something that we can harness and use as we go forward.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things about those masks I'm kind of curious about is, the spread of droplets. I mean, I could see how it could help. in the sense of if somebody is sick and they cough or sneeze or something, it's going to stop those droplets from going down and landing on a surface and then the virus dwelling on that surface. So in that sense, I mean, maybe it's not, hospital grade, but it kind of comes down to anything is better than nothing. And, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do need to have an N95 for it to be effective. But I mean, if coughing into your elbow, just from a common sense standpoint, if coughing into your elbow is better than just coughing out into space, then having something on your mask or on your face to block it, I imagine it would do some good.
I think so. Yeah. I just don't want people to get caught up in like maybe a false sense of protection or security. So my advice and what my friends are saying too is that they're at least going to wear like a face shield if they are wearing a fabric mask, or what's happening already is that they're reusing their N95s. So if they're having to reuse it or extended use, that they're putting a face shield on over it too.
A lot of what both of you are talking about too kind of speaks to the disruption, this mandatory sort of disruption that we're dealing with the virus, and using that, harnessing whatever positive we can take from that, which I know is a terrible thing to try to say right now. But if we can take something and use that mandatory disruption that we didn't have a choice about and disrupt our industry, and I think we're seeing this a little bit, to move forward and start answering questions that nobody ever thought to ask, or maybe people didn't want to ask because they were afraid of the answer. And I think, just your comments, our uncertainty about whether this mask will work or homemade is beneficial, something better than nothing, we don't know those answers. And I think this has really forced us to look into our processes and figure out, if what we're doing is really enough. Is it what works, and what do we need to get better on? I think that's an important thing that's going to change in our industry.
I just like that people are using the word PPE, like people that are not in safety. There's newscasters, there's just people on Good Morning America or whatever, like they're saying PPE and they know what it is. Isn't that weird?
Very weird. And one of the things, I agree with everything you guys are talking about and everything you guys are discussing. I want to kind of take the conversation to a different point for just a second, though, because I want to talk a little bit about how our world as safety professionals is going to be different post-coronavirus, post-quarantine. Because right now you're seeing a lot of Zoom calls that are happening, safety meetings that are being done online. You see a lot of focus, trying to get people refocused on things other than just this. So how does this change our safety world? How does it change how we do our jobs after this?
Well, don't you think you're being a little presumptuous there, Jason? How do you know it isn't the end of the world?
I've got faith in the human spirit.
We have earthquakes and we have locusts.
Yikes.
Again, faith in the human spirit.
Well, that's one of the things. When I was trying to jump in earlier, I was actually going to make a point about what Jason Maldonado said. He made a good point, and then he kind of apologized about it by saying, we don't want to, make light of the negative things that are happening, and people are losing their lives and people are suffering, and that's a serious thing. But you also have to make the best of your situation, and you have to keep your spirits up. I think that's really important, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people look to you, Jason Lucas, because you're kind of like a spirit doctor in the sense of, you're always so positive and you're always trying to remind people to look at the best. And, just now you're saying, I have faith in the human spirit. And so I just wanted to make that point that we shouldn't apologize for trying to still have a good time. I mean, we can acknowledge that people dying are a bad thing. We don't want that to happen. I mean, we work in safety, but we need to be able to take these things in stride.
I think you're right about that. We all process these types of things differently, and I know you all just saw my email that I sent out, but I sent out an email earlier today that kind of just thinking about everything that's going on in the world today reminded me of a trip that I took to New York City right before 9/11 happened. And how much the world changed, how much we were unaware of. That at that point in my life, I had no clue, no care. It was well before I had gone into the military, so I didn't really think of things in a wide spectrum. And I think that's where a lot of people are right now. We have to be able to kind of look at things objectively and evaluate where we are and evaluate what we still have, and it's still pretty good. But then move on past this and move forward. And I think that if we can do that as safety professionals, one of the biggest ways that we could probably do that is, like you were saying, get the focus back. I think Jason was saying it. Get the focus back on what we actually do day to day and what we have to do to continue our lives, because provided that it isn't the end of the world. We have a lot more to come and we have a lot more to do. So let's get going.
But this is a thought process that's every single day, which I think is different. I know for me, not having to deal with such uncertainty, anxiety, adversity, and just all day, every day. And it's only been, like I said, a week of like real lockdown. So I guess we didn't really plan this ahead, but I'm wondering about strategies, and maybe Jason Lucas can answer this because you do the social media safety minute every single day. But how do we process things like on a daily basis that it's so heavy and there's so much negative and there's misinformation? Like, do we use this mask or that mask? What do we say to people? And with guidance changing every single day too, we're going through this on a daily basis to reevaluate. And honestly, it can be really exhausting.
Yeah, and I think that's why self-care is so important in these times. You have to be able to take that time away and nap a little bit, or spend time with your family a little bit, or focus on things that aren't coronavirus related a little bit, turn off the news a little bit. There's so many different things that we can be doing to make sure that we're being taken care of so that we can be the best provider of caring for others that we can possibly be as safety professionals. One of the things that I'm trying to do at my company is to give a safety moment every morning, because I'm not able to be there. So I'm sending out a little video or a little safety moment bulletin or something every morning that goes out to all of my guys that the managers and supervisors send out. But you know what I'm not talking about in any of those? Coronavirus. I'm talking about pre-tripping your vehicles, inspecting your tools before you use them. I'm trying to bring back a sense of normalcy, because all of our workers are hearing this day in and day out. They can't turn on the TV without talking about it. They can't turn on social media without hearing about it. So I'm trying to bring a focus back onto the other safety items that aren't coronavirus related, so that maybe we can turn this thing around from a standpoint of at least how they're looking at their jobs.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Jason. I'm personally very optimistic about the future. I do think everything's going to be okay. Ultimately, I think that, the markets are going to rebound. I think the jobs are going to come back. And for now, I am focusing a lot on the now, because I'm not too worried about the future. I'm very optimistic about it. And as far as how it will be different, I think we're going to learn a lot about maybe what some of our weaknesses were, and it's a good opportunity for us to say, okay, maybe we weren't as well prepared in these different ways. And then lastly, I think that a lot of people are going to maybe not take things as much for granted as they were before. It's sort of a good way to give you perspective. And as much as I hate to say it, I mean, some of us will lose some loved ones, and it's going to be very difficult. And I'm not trying to make light of any of that at all, but maybe take the opportunity right now to call your grandma and grandpa and talk to them and make sure that they're doing okay, and take care of each other, and just know that this is going to be temporary. And in the end, we're all going to be able to move back, and we will get back into that normalcy. So Jason, I appreciate you, trying to maintain some standard of normalcy through this crazy time.
I appreciate that.
I definitely, the one thing that I love about this group is that we end up going off into rabbit holes that we didn't even know existed when we start talking about things. Who would think that on a safety show would start talking about calling your loved ones and bringing your life back to normal? But I think that's really what we're about. And if people who are listening haven't caught on yet, safety is not just about, we know that safety is not about accidents. it's about what we do day in, day out, and our lives are so much bigger than work. Work is a huge part of it. But right now we're all experiencing that time where we can't really do work like we're used to. So we're having to figure out how to fill the void and fill the gap. And I know there's a lot of people that just needed to hear some of these positive messages right now. So thankful for all of you for being part of that positive vibe.
Well, and imagine, talk about taking things for granted. Imagine how you're going to feel when you walk into the grocery store after this is over and you see the toilet paper aisle just stocked full of rolls of toilet paper.
That's hilarious.
It's going to be a nice day.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's funny. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about, it reminds me of something that, of course, guess who? Gary Vaynerchuk put out like a week ago, maybe.
Wait, who's that?
Right? I never talk about him. Gary V, my friend. So he said that we need to focus on 3 things, and it's kind of an acronym, PPI. So perspective, that you and your family are in good well-being; patience, that in time things will return to relative normal; and innovation, and how you adapt to the new norms. So I've been thinking about that a lot the past week or so, especially when I get kind of just exhausted or brought down with all the news, which the only tip I can really offer for self-care is that I don't look at the news all day. I basically look at one email digest at the end of the day from the Center for Infectious Disease Response and Policy, or Research and Policy, CIDRAP from the University of Minnesota, and that's it. Otherwise, I'm trying to practice the stuff that Gary Vee is talking about. So perspective, patience, and innovation.
I think this is an awesome time to innovate safety as a whole. I mean, not just in podcasts and not just in ways that we're sharing our message, but I believe that this is a turning point for not just safety, but the world. But to bring it back to safety, the turning point is going to be ways that we can do things. There's going to be virtual safety conferences. There's going to be virtual expo halls. There's going to be so many things that are done virtually that those innovations are occurring right now to make up for the demand that we're not able to meet through social distancing, that we're going to see. It's going to change the landscape of safety as a whole. I'm really excited about it because I think that there's so many things that we as a Safety Justice League can be doing better in innovation and utilizing the current technology to reach the people and talk to the folks that see value in what we're presenting. I'm really excited about it, honestly.
I think one of the biggest parts of all of this is that we're really seeing clearly, well, not we, because we knew this already, but I think our leaders, at least the ones that are really looking at things objectively and understanding the implications of everything that's happening nowadays, our leaders are starting to understand that safety is about the worker. It's not about a platitude. It's not about a slogan. It's not about having the best safety manual. It's about what your workers do day in and day out, and they are the critical piece. If they don't do it, the product doesn't get made, the construction doesn't get built, and nothing really continues to move in the life that we know it. And if we can capitalize on that aspect of what's going on right now and really start getting people to bring the workers in to help write the procedures and to help explain how to do it better and come up with innovative ideas about their machine or their equipment or their work environment, I think that's where we're really going to see some huge changes. And we don't have to label it. We don't have to call it any brand of any, safety 1, safety 2, whatever's out there, all those things that we all know very well. We're just going to move on and get better. And I think that's where we are right now. And I think that for me is pretty exciting.
Yeah, that gave me an idea, Jason. We're talking about some of the leaders who are actually doing the right things. And there are a lot of really good examples out there of businesses who are doing the right things, sending their employees home, making sure that they're taken care of, not laying them off, not messing around, trying to, say you're not laid off, you're at 0 hours, so you can't get unemployment, that sort of stuff. But, I think that it's sort of going to be a bit of a reveal by the end of this between the businesses that actually show that they care about their employees, and then there's going to be examples of the ones who showed that they didn't care about their employees as well. And I think hopefully people will take that into consideration when they make their their purchase decisions going forward. If there's a business that's not taking care of their employees, I mean, look, the best way to take care of your customers is to take care of your employees, because your employees are the ones that interact with the customers. And so it's a bad sign if a business is not taking care of their employees, because it means that they don't really care about you either. It means that the leadership, there's something wrong there. And so there's all these examples. People are reaching out to me saying, I can't believe my leadership's doing this or doing this in this time, and they're putting me at risk. I don't feel safe, and this kind of thing. And it's really a tragedy. It's really tragedy. But I think that these are the same leaders that don't get safety either. And so what I'm hoping is that this will help nudge the safety differently, or the revolution in safety, so that maybe that will result in clearing some of these bad leaders out of the way, because hopefully it will expose them. And then if better people leading these companies that actually care about the welfare of their employees rather than just paying lip service to it, as Jason said, I think that'll be good for safety too.
And thank goodness for social media that can show us all this stuff in real time also, because we're seeing real, tweets or LinkedIn posts and screenshots and things from actual employees that are getting this horrible type of communication or policy from their companies. So we can see this stuff and be a more informed consumer or be a more informed job searcher in the future. There's already a meme out there. I think it's from Legally Blonde, where she's in a job interview and she's asking, how did you treat your employees during coronavirus? And that's a new interview question to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was just about to bring up, was the idea that, as an employee or a potential employee, that's going to be a question that's going to come up following this, is how did you manage your employees through coronavirus? Because that's going to be a determining factor for a lot of people on whether or not they're willing to go to a company that is potentially seeking to hire them for services. Gone are the days where it's just the company interviewing the potential prospect. Nowadays, it's also the interviewee that's interviewing the company to see whether or not that's a place that they want to go.
You know what, guys, we have covered some broad landscape in this episode, and I'm really thankful to hear all these perspectives from all of you. For those of you listening, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what's going on in your world about this topic, and I think it's something that we can all share ideas about and get better from. But hey, we all know one thing: it's going to be different going forward, but it's still going to be good. So keep that positivity up. Join us next time. We're going to continue with the positive messages, but we'll probably get into something a little bit more edgy. See you then.
Wash your beards, everybody, and your hands.
And your hands.
You are listening to Safety Justice League podcast on Safety FM.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.